Power Rangers, Transformers, G.I. Joe. What do these three franchises have in common? Well, they're all owned by Hasbro. You know, the owners of Dungeons & Dragons. A couple of years ago, we were graced with Power Rangers, the role-playing game. And soon after, we got Transformers, and then we got G.I. Joe. All of which utilize the Essence 20 system, a framework built from the ground up that really makes these franchises shine. This is a culmination of all of that work. A strange combination of franchises, a crossover, if you will. This is a review of Field Guide to Action and Adventure. Let's dive in. Let me begin by saying this review will be separated into 3.5 parts. We'll start with the new options for players and move on to the new options for GMs. I'll go over the adventure, memories, and salvation before quickly going over some notable things about the book's presentation and layout, and then finish with my final thoughts. So here we have our Field Guide to Action and Adventure. Let's turn this sucker over and take a look at the back. Welcome to the Ultimate Crossover, a source book for the Power Rangers Roleplaying Game, G.I. Joe Roleplaying Game, and Transformers Roleplaying Game. The Field Guide to Action and Adventure provides advice for all three games individually, plus options for combining characters or threats in an epic crossover adventure. This book, of course, was published by Renegade Game Studios, and it just came out recently in 2023. This also makes use of the Essence 20 role-playing system, which is pretty standard for the whole line of products from Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, and Transformers. The Field Guide aims to serve as a huge crossover event between two or more of the three franchises mentioned before. The main crux of creating a character using the Essence 20 system revolves around choosing your character's influence, their origins, and their role. We get 9 new influences that can be used, although I will say 2 directly mention Transformers, or rather, having an alt mode in order to use them. So we have Cybertronian military and Cybertronian with attitude, definitely your Transformer type characters. We have the diplomat, the escapist, hometown hero, investigator, nobility, skeptic, and stargazer. We also get 4 new origins that really set characters up for the crossovers. So we have the android, the gridthropologist, the pretender, and the strategist. And last but not least, we get 1 new role, the envoy. The envoy is very interesting because these types of characters act as diplomatic ambassadors between 2 factions, so Power Rangers, G.I. Joes, and or Cybertronians. Character creation is the same as ever, and the Essence 20 system does a very good job of keeping everything consistent. There are only a few minor concepts that vary from franchise to franchise, such as power points from Power Rangers and Energon from Transformers, but in the end it all works out. I really appreciate that the crossover chapter goes into detail as to what makes each franchise unique and different from one another. But not only that, they list and describe the different influences, the different origins, the different roles, and how you can use them with other franchises. You want a Transformer Power Ranger? Yes, please. I was really worried when I started going over character creation that I would have to take apart the system and make my Transformer Power Ranger work, but it really wasn't complicated. You're just taking the influence, the origin, the role from one franchise and combining it with another influence, origin, or role from a different franchise. It's not really cut and paste, it's just more about pasting things together. I think the GM gets the most benefit out of this book. You get a nice review of how to GM the systems and the different franchises and what makes them special. By far, the best chapter in this entire book, something that I've been clamoring for since my review on Power Rangers, is a process on how to create your own threats. And by golly, we got it. We got a whole chapter on it, creating threats. I will say, despite how easy the process may seem, you're still going to have to put in some work. What this chapter does give you is a way to calculate threat health based on a threat level which you determine, the essence scores, your skill ranks and defenses, and perks, powers, and hang-ups as well. This is everything that I've wanted on the subject, and it really opens up what you can do with your Essence 20 games, specifically if you're playing Power Rangers. The price of this book is well worth it for this chapter alone. I might be overreacting just a little bit. And did I mention that they actually give you some examples of threats from each of the different franchises that have been combined with a different one? So you got some from Power Rangers, you have some from G.I. Joe, you have some from Transformers, and they all look and sound pretty cool as well. Last but not least, you get your chapters on creating scenes and creating adventures. I'm really seeing a theme here when compared to the other chapters. The book goes out of its way to describe what makes each franchise unique. For example, in creating scenes, we have a section on Power Rangers, scene design, and then one for G.I. Joes, and then one for Transformers, and then we finally get to the crossover scenes. I'll say it here, but I'll say it again when we get to my final thoughts. Most of the information here could have been better served in those respective franchises, and then just left the crossover stuff for this book. I did like the chapter on creating adventures. The information is very well organized, and it does what it says. It helps you create adventures by giving you different flow charts on adventure anatomy and how to flesh out adventures with scenes. I find it particularly interesting that the book recommends that you create the end first and then the call to action, which is the beginning, and then you develop everything in between. I'll have to actually try that sometime. Sounds like a pretty interesting idea. Something that was very awkward was when I came upon the section on leveling up. I could have sworn this was in the other books, but no, this is actually really the first time that I recall them ever mentioning when to level up. As you could probably guess, it's milestone based. The Adventure and Field Guide is, as you would assume, a crossover between all three franchises. Memories and Salvation is separated into 3 acts plus the introductions for each of the different settings. The actual premise for the adventure is a little confusing, but simply put, the Machine Empire from Power Rangers Zero, the Dreadnoks from G.I. Joe, and Scrap Heap from Transformers have all come together to create some sort of a machine that can cause amnesia. For the Power Rangers and Transformers, they'll be looking for TJ and Cosmos respectively, as they have succumbed to the machine already. The G.I. Joes are en route to transport a rare material that powers this machine. Unbeknownst to them, the Xandars are in the process of hauling the rest of it and have laid a trap for the Joes. Wow, that's a lot of background information, but we're ready to go on with the first act, Otherworldly Warehouse. This is a simple investigation that allows each side a chance to investigate or perform the task appointed to them. I really appreciate that there's an order of events, both before the heroes arrive and what happens during their investigation. Organization is key here. Things really kick off when the Joes trigger the Xandar's trap or any of the other heroes catch on to the disguised enemies. But with the enemies teaming up, the heroes might not stand a chance. The heroes will have to contend with the likes of Prototype Cogs, Scrap Heap, Prototype Tesla, the Xandars, the whole gang. Act 2 has the heroes giving chase to the stolen cargo. It is very possible that the heroes may have won the battle or prevented the enemies from escaping with the cargo. Sad face. Should have made it harder for them. Act 3 has the heroes group up together to attack the villain's base, where a final showdown takes place. Depending on whether or not the players stop the cargo will determine how powerful the final boss is. Overall, this is a pretty solid starting adventure if you have players that are invested in all three of the franchises. You'll have to pull some of the adventure apart or keep things the same if you have players that are split between 2 of the different franchises, which would kind of be lame. Like with any adventure that forces the characters to meet for the first time, there's actually a certain level of risk involved. Will the characters attack each other? Or even worse, will they stay split from the rest of the group for the entirety of the adventure? Just remember to point out the major rules for each of the franchises. Power Rangers have Zordon's rules. G.I. Joes are just grown up and mature enough to figure things out on their own. And Transformers, well, they're only in it to beat up the Decepticons anyways. Actually, that's a pretty poor point because Scrap Heap isn't really technically a Decepticon. He's like from Junkion, so he's a mercenary. If you're gearing up for a crossover campaign, this would be a good place to start, except it starts characters off at 2nd level, so this really wouldn't be the first time that they would play these characters anyway, so I wouldn't really go for this as your absolute first adventure. The book follows the same format as the others. It's clean and well organized. I really do like how the actual stat blocks look. It's very easy to read, unlike some other books. Star Wars FFG, just saying. But it is very easy to find information, no matter how long or lengthy that specific character is. There's also bullet points for a lot of the information and bolds for the very important words that you'll need. It's a product that really knows how to present its information. The art, for the most part, is recycled from the previous 3 core rulebooks. The exception is from some of the crossover art, such as the cover, and some of what you would find in the adventure itself. It would have been nice to see more new or original art, but oh well. Last thing I'll touch upon is how dense this book is. There is a lot of information here. In fact, I would say the easiest parts of the book to read are the new crossover options because there's actually some space there. For everything else, it really is like reading a textbook. And despite it being closer to Power Rangers and page count, it took me far longer to get through this book than any of the other 3 core rulebooks. This book is not going to be for everyone. There, I said it. This book is clearly for people who want to play with their G.I. Joe action figures, and their Power Ranger action figures, and their Transformer action figures at the same time. This book is for people who want to pit the Megazord up against Megatron while Duke is barraging the Decepticons with missile fire. If you have one of the core rulebooks and are looking for new stuff, there is very little in this book for you. Now comes the cold hard truth. I've already said this before, that many of the parts in this book would have been a better fit for the actual core rulebooks, and I still stand by that. The price of this would have been lowered, and we would have actually gotten the relevant information in those core rulebooks. Now, you would have to buy the core rulebook that you want and invest in this book, which is about the same price as the others as well, for some of the information in this that would actually pertain to being a good GM, like creating your own threats. I really like what is in this book, but I also believe that its implementation of the material that could have been used in the other rulebooks is just all wrong. Would I recommend Field Guide to Action and Adventure? Only if you want to play with your cake and your cookies and your ice creams all at the same time. If you have no intention of doing a crossover, then go get a source book from your respective franchise. G.I. Joe has the Cobra Codex source book coming out in August. Transformers has the Decepticon Directive source book, which is coming around September. And Power Rangers already has Across the Stars source book, and they're also getting Jump Through Time source book out in November. Hey guys, this is a quick edit. I was looking at the Renegade Game Studios website and I noticed that they have a couple of adventures that cross over just Transformers and G.I. Joe. So if you want to do a crossover without those pesky teenagers with attitude, those would be a better place to start. So that's gonna do it for this video. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support this series, and I will see you guys in the next video.